Okay, well, welcome again to reading Homer. We're looking at the Odyssey, book 1, and we got up to, I think, roughly about line 22, and so we'll continue on from this line 22. So remember, in the story, the gods have all met together. They've had pity on him, all except for Poseidon, and he was extremely angry with Odysseus before he got himself home. Well, where was Poseidon? Well, this is what he's going to tell us here. Alhomen Aithiopas metakiathi teloth iontas. So, but he, Homen, that's referring back to Poseidon. Now we have our verb metakiathe. Now there is a little word kio, which this is connected with, one of the many verbs in Greek of coming and going. This is connected with this one. Metakio has more of the sense of, well, elsewhere in Homer it can often mean to chase after someone. Here it's got the sense of to go on a visit. And by the way, if you're looking at the scansion of this, the iota has to be long here for it to scan properly, even though it's normally would have been short, but in this it would have been pronounced long, or taken as a long syllable. Okay, so, but he was going on a visit to the Aithiopas, to the Ethiopians. Telothiontas, those being, you normally wouldn't get the e in front, you just get ontas. In Attic, here we have the uncontracted participle from the verb to be, so they're being teloth. Now what's missing at the end there? This is teloth I. And this here is again an old locative ending. So they were at somewhere far away. We get that tele root. We get our word telephone is from that same root there, to call from afar. So he was out visiting the Ethiopians, who are a long way away. Now we have an interesting little example in Homer. This is the only one that you'll see in the Odyssey, but the trick occurs several times in the Iliad, and it's got a special technical name. It's called an analepsis. Analepsis. And it's really just a literary device that Homer uses. It's a little bit like what we do in our modern times, that is where we use a footnote. This is, if you will, sort of Homer's version of a footnote. So what he does is he repeats the name that he's got on the previous line, and then he's going to tell you all about them. So it's literally, but he was off visiting the Ethiopians, who were a long way away, and then the Ethiopians, toi for hoi, who, dedaiatai. Now, a couple of things to note here. This is a perfect passive from a defective verb. That means you don't get all the forms of this. So the verb is daiatai. Daiatai means is separated. Now the other thing to note is this looks like a third person singular, but it can't be because this is plural and the Ethiopians are plural. And that alpha there is really the ntai. It's really what scholars call a sonant N, or a sounded N, which is written as an alpha. So daiatai becomes dentai. So just watch out for that. That's very tricky. That looks like it's singular, but it's actually a plural form of the verb. So the Ethiopians, who are separated, diktha apart, that is, they're separate away from the rest of humanity, and they're eskatoi andron. Eskatos here probably has the sense of remote. So these are remote from men. So this is the Greeks regarded the Ethiopians, they'd heard about these people from North Africa, they regarded them as very somehow mystical and strange, and they thought there were actually two groups of these. Ones that lived at the west and one in the east. So he says underneath here, so these were the remote from men, hoi men, and we get a hoi der. So some of them, and now we get a genitive. We get two genitives here, two genitive participles. And these are in fact locative genitives. So the Greek lost its locative ending very early when it came from Greek, from Indo-European. There's no special locative ending apart from these it that you see from time to time. And so Greek often used the genitive in place of the locative. So some of them, and it really tells you where something happens. So some of them were at the setting of Hyperion, that's the setting of the sun, i.e. the west, and some were at the rising. This is from anhiemi, to go up. So this is the rising, this is the setting. This is from duno, or dunamai. So some were at the setting of the sun and some were at the rising. So Poseidon's off visiting the Ethiopians, and Homer tells us a little bit about these. Now, why was he there? Well, we have a nice participle here, antioon, which may or may not be a future participle. People debate whether there was supposed to be a sigma there that's lost. Anyway, the sense is it is a kind of future in its sense. So it's anti-o. It means something like looking to accept, or looking to accept, and it's taking a genitive, a hecatomb of bulls and lambs. Now, a hecatomb is literally meant to be the sacrifice of 100 animals, 100 oxen. And often when you see hecatomb in Homer, it doesn't literally necessarily mean 100, which is a huge number. But here, in fact, we have a god, Poseidon, and we have these strange Ethiopians. So one is tempted to think, well, yes, perhaps he is being given this offering of 100 oxen. But generally, we just translate this as hecatomb. So he was looking to receive, or looking to accept, a hecatomb of bulls and lambs. Enther, ho, and there he, terpeto, get is important, he was in fact enjoying himself, terpeto. Paraamenos, from paraemai, sitting beside, the deity is the feast. Now the nominative of that form is deis. It's connected with deinumi, to divide up the meat, divide up the food, generally just translated as a feast. So he in fact was enjoying himself sitting at the feast, sitting beside the feast. But hoi de day, but in fact, don't forget their little particles, they're nice to take note of, but the others, in fact, this is the other gods. And on our next line we go for the verb erzan, they were, athraoi, all together, any for n, you'll often see n for any in Homer, so n, any for n, in the megaroisi, in the halls of Zeus, of Olympian Zeus. So Poseidon's off enjoying himself at the feast, having a good time. But the other gods, in fact, were all together in the halls of Olympian Zeus. Toisedemuthon archi pater andron te dionte. So there's the subject here. Look along to find the subject. So this is the father of men and of gods. This is often the expression used for Zeus. He's the father of men and gods. Erke, he began, and it's taking a genitive, made a beginning, muthon, of words, genitive plural, toisi, for them. So, but the father of gods and of men made a beginning of words for them or to them. Mnesato is connected with that verb of remembering, so, or calling to mind. So for he called to mind, no augment again, for he called to mind katathumon in his heart, and it's taking a genitive. He called to mind amumenos aigistoio. Now this of course is Aegisthus, the fellow who killed Agamemnon after when Agamemnon had come back from war, killed him in the bathtub along with his with Agamemnon's wife Clytemnestra. Various different different versions of the story, and some of them it's Clytemnestra who does the killing, and others it's Aegisthus. I think in Homer generally it's Aegisthus who does the actual killing. We have that wonderful play, the Agamemnon of Aeschylus, where in that part of the story he's in the bathtub and they throw a net over him and kill him. Anyway, this is this Aegisthus here, and his amumenos. Now this is a word much debated and written about. Older scholars and older commentaries see this, translated this as blameless, without blame. Well, I guess this is not without blame, quite the opposite, so this has always been a contentious translation. It appears now to be connected with some old Indo-European root meaning something like surpass. So it has a social rather than a moral sense. So I generally prefer to translate this as high-born. Other scholars think it may have to do with the fact that he's Aegisthus is extremely attractive, and so this means without blemish or something, so he's very attractive. I think high-born is probably the easiest translation here. So for he called to mind in his heart, high-born Aegisthus, ton for hon, whom, and then the subject is at the end of the sentence, and there's the adjective that goes with it, teleklutos Orestes. There's that tele root again we saw before from afar. Klutos has that sense of your name is heard, so you're famous. So far famed, perhaps you could translate that. So, but far famed Orestes, the son of Agamemnon, notice this patronymic ending ides here. Far famed Orestes, son of Agamemnon, ektane, killed ton him, or it's literally whom far famed Orestes, son of Agamemnon, killed. This ektan, in Attic, this would be ektana, or ektane. That's the aorist from katano, to kill. This is what's known as an apocryphated aorist. It's a very handy little form because it's only 2 syllables. So he killed Aegisthus. And then this line here links back to 2 lines back, because it says that Zeus called to mind Aegisthus, and now he says, but of him, so that's Aegisthus he's thinking about. So he in fact called to mind, or having called to mind to this guy, that is Aegisthus, met erde, that's an alpha in here if you're looking it up, it's audao. So he began to speak epia, there's an alpha there, neuter plural from epos. He began to speak words to the immortals. So calling him to mind, the Aegisthus, he began to speak words to the immortals. And we'll leave it at that point, and we'll continue in the next video.